welcome. My name is John, and I'm just here to discuss movies on the YT. And if you'd like to join that discussion, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell as well. And it's Monday, although this is going to release late on Monday. It's still Monday where I am, and that means it's time for Monster Movie Monday, which is a series I'm doing leading up to Godzilla versus Kong. And today, I felt like I had to talk about a Mothra movie. And the original Mothra, I was only able to watch and find the dubbed version. But I figured, why not talk about Mothra versus Godzilla? One of the first, monster movies where they actually battled each other and fought each other. So that's the one we're talking about today. So let's get started. So Mothra versus Godzilla, the 1962 version, is directed by Ishiro Honda, who's directed a lot of these. He directed the original Godzilla. He's directed quite a few of these kaiju films. And so in this movie, you have this giant egg that washes up ashore after a tsunami or typhoon. And you find out it's Mothra's egg. Let's get into this and talk about the action. And this is probably one of the more weaker aspects. This and the visuals, in my opinion, are probably the two weakest aspects of this movie. And that's mostly because it's not necessarily this movie's fault that the action isn't quite as good as I want it to be. It's more the limitations of early 60s technology. Because to have, Mothra and Godzilla fight, it felt awkward because, in Godzilla Raids Again, in that, when he fights the Anguirus, I don't know if I said that right, but when he fights him, it's like two people in the monster costumes fighting each other. In this, you get the guy in the Godzilla costume fighting a moth puppet, and it just feels awkward to me. And they, obviously they don't have CGI and stuff, and they just didn't have a lot of technology at their disposal back in the early 60s. And I just think that kind of takes away a little bit, because one thing I praised the original Godzilla for is the action didn't feel like 50s action. It felt more along the lines 80s or something. So while it did feel slightly dated, it didn't feel as dated. This was in 1962, and when you watch the action, it looks like it was made in 1962. And for me personally, I'm conflicted because I feel like I feel like it's unfair to hold it against the movie, but at the same time, it affects my enjoyment level a little bit. Moving on to the acting and the characters. The acting I thought was actually really good. All the acting in these, they're not in these kaiju movies, outside of maybe the first Godzilla. They're all good acting. To kind of relate it to modern day, it's almost good quality blockbuster acting, but it's not quite Academy Award acting, if you know what I mean. And this is like that. You don't get the greatest performances out there, but you still get some really good performances. And I like the way kind of the Mothra, both of the Mothra movies, I love how they have characters that are these greedy corporate people contrasted against an ideological person. In this movie, it happens to be the newspaper. It happens to be the journalist. And then you also have it contrasted against the Aboriginal native people. And so I like the character dynamics in both of the Mothra movies, even though this is the first one. I was only able to watch the dubbed version, which is why I actually did not talk about that one, because I didn't feel like it was fair to with the way I structure my reviews to discuss the acting category when it's dubbed like that. But moving on to the visuals, this is probably the most hit or miss category for me, because I think there's some beautiful shots in here, but I don't think the green screen effects, while I think they hold up to 1962 movies and 1962 effects, I don't think they transcend the time period, whereas I would argue the original Godzilla does transcend its time period in terms of the quality of its effects. This does not, which, like I said, I'm a little conflicted on how to grade it with stuff like that. But even in things, there are some times where cinematography I didn't feel like was the best, where they had awkward angles, particularly during like the Mothra versus Godzilla fight. And then also, just kind of a personal thing here, I like the story and mythology around Mothra. I love the mythology around Mothra. I actually love it more than Godzilla's mythology. But I don't like the look of Mothra, how she's just like this bright yellow thing. I don't know. I've seen moths in my life. There are dark moths out there. They're like brown and stuff. They're not all like as brightly colored as like Mothra is. And I just feel like it would be more effective if they went for like a darker toned looking moth. Not necessarily this movie to be darker toned, but just to kind of make Mothra look more threatening, because he looks more cartoonish to me. So moving on to the story and the writing, this was easily the brightest aspect of this movie for me, and I was kind of shocked how much I actually enjoyed the writing up until the end, which I will get to later. I really enjoyed the writing and just kind of the themes of this movie. It felt, even though the human characters weren't psychologically the deepest necessarily, they bring together not only great character dynamics between them, but they bring together like these themes about like technology and corporate society contrasted against like the Aboriginal native society. And so you have like these nice themes in there, as well as they incorporate the kind of nuclear testing and stuff, themes around the morals of nuclear testing that you get with like the Godzilla side of it. Mothra has more of the, corporate greedy themes, and then Godzilla has the more morality of nuclear testing themes, and they just kind of combat and they mix them together extremely well in this movie. Overall, I think the structure of the story is also really good, and how the first part of the movie is mostly about Mothra's egg, and it builds up this Mothra side of it, but also you kind of they find like Godzilla's scale, even though you don't technically know it at the time, although it's pretty obvious. And then kind of after you get through all the Mothra egg stuff and the corporate side of all of that, and it introduces that aspect, then Godzilla comes, creates havoc, wreaks havoc. And then because of the stuff earlier, because of like the first act or whatever, it introduces the way for humans to kind of defeat Godzilla. But the one aspect of the structure that I was not a fan of is the fact that the actual Mothra versus Godzilla fight isn't the climactic battle or the climactic fight. It feels like it's a great fight for that time period, and with 60s technology and the limitations on that, it's a pretty good, decent fight, even though it feels dated. And since that wasn't like the big climactic battle, it almost feels like this movie blows its load a little too early, if you know what I mean. Because the final climactic battle is Godzilla versus moth larva. Not an actual giant moth, but moth larva. And I guess I forgot to talk about this in the action, but that final battle, it's really just these larvas sitting there spraying at Godzilla. It's not very exciting for an action scene. I should have mentioned that in the action, but I guess it slipped my mind. But that's the one aspect of the structure that really got to me, and that's really transitions into my main issue, even though I think the story and the writing is the brightest aspect, especially with how they incorporate the themes and how they kind of structure the majority of the story. My biggest problem here with this movie is the ending of the movie. Because like I said, you get this very lackluster final battle with Godzilla versus larva. But on top of that, in the first movie, they had to create an entirely new WMD to destroy Godzilla, the oxygen destroyer. And in the second movie, in the second movie, Godzilla Raids Again, I thought they found a clever way to get around not having to do something like that by being able to bury him and trap him under like an avalanche. But in this movie, he gets stopped because they sprayed webbing around him. I mean, yeah, sure, it's super strength webbing. I'm sure it's probably even stronger than Spider-Man's webbing, because it comes from Mothra or Mothra larva. But still, he just gets trapped in webbing, and then that's how he gets defeated. And it's just extremely lackluster, and it really bugged me. The ending really took it down a notch. And then quickly on the sound, I thought there were moments of really good scores, like in the Mothra versus Godzilla fight, not the final larva battle, but the one with actual Mothra and Godzilla. I thought the score there was actually really good. And the sound quality of the movie, I don't think it's the best, but I still think it's decently good, especially with how they incorporate the Mothra sound with the Godzilla roar, even though I don't think they do as good of a job on the roar as they did in the original. But there are also moments where it just feels like a generic, almost blockbuster-like score. And so, overall, Mothra has some 60s fun that feel like it's from the 60s, so it's a little dated. If you don't like dated effects, then you might not be the biggest fan here, but it explores some great themes of like corporate technology society versus the Aboriginal native society. And so you get like a nice theme there. You get some action that's good for its time, but is somewhat lackluster nowadays. Plus, you get a very lackluster ending that really doesn't sit well with me. That being said, the story itself I really did enjoy, and I loved the themes within this movie. And because of that, I think I'm still going to give Mothra vs. Godzilla a 3.5. If you have seen Mothra vs. Godzilla, go ahead and share your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up icon, smash that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell as well. The next couple of weeks are still going to be the more classic stuff before, it'll probably be roughly March-ish before I get into the modern movies, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. It'll either be King Kong versus Godzilla, the original one, or one of the Mecha Godzilla movies, because I really want to honestly explore one of the Mecha Godzilla movies. And so stay tuned, and I will return next time when I see you again.